You're listening to Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Join us as we explore how medical professionals can achieve stellar success in all areas of life. It's time to level up.
Hi, everyone. This is Stellar Success Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tudor Francu, and I have the pleasure of having a very dear guest today, Mike Herman. And I'm going to let Mike to introduce himself and tell us about his profession, what he's doing, what his story is in a few words, in a few minutes. How are
Sure.
you doing,
Well,
Mike?
Hey, doing great today. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm a registered nurse. I live in Northern California. I've been a nurse here for 14 years, always at the same hospital. Started in a neurotrauma ICU for a couple of years. Got some ICU experience there, then moved to the ER. We're a level 2 trauma center here, and with the goal of becoming a flight nurse. And I've since been doing that now for the last 10 years. Just hit my 10-year anniversary last month, so it's been a
That's
wild.
exciting. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It's a fun job. It's a challenging job, but yeah, we love it. And
Yeah, I
it's
bet you
great.
see a lot.
Yeah, we do. You'd be surprised. We do a lot of fairly easy stuff too. Transfers and whatnot. People just need to get from A to B, and there's no ambulances available or things like that. But
Yeah.
certainly there's the challenging moments where it can be the most stressful 30 minutes of your life.
Exactly. Yeah,
For sure.
that's
Like I
right.
said, it's and yeah, I love it. So
Awesome.
yeah, that's basically what I do.
Cool, man. The podcast is called Stellar Success, right? So I just want to kind of pick your brain on what your definition of success is and what that means for you.
You're coming out with some hard questions right out the gate here, Tudor. I mean, I think success, simply put, is achieving a goal, right? So you set a goal in front of you. If you achieve that goal, you have succeeded in that goal. Just kind of an example is one of my hobbies is to climb mountains, whether it's just hiking them, rock climbing them, mountaineering with ice axe, crampons, whatever the case. If my goal is to summit that mountain and I don't achieve it, then I have failed that goal, right? But I change it because I don't make that my goal. I make my goal having fun, staying alive, coming home, and just enjoying the adventure. So I've turned around many times on different adventures, and for various reasons, whether it's bad weather, not feeling well, I'm just scared, things like that. I'll turn around and the mountain's still going to be there. And as long as I make it home and I had a good time and I learned something from it, to me, that's been a successful trip. So it's
Yeah.
really subjective success. And it's a matter of what's the goal is for you. And in the terms of general life, like to me, success isn't about how much money I've made. It's not about my job or my title or my status. Like I have really two ways that I'm going to gauge my success at the end of my life is did I love God well and did I love other people well? And so with that in mind, I look at on a daily basis, am I displaying my relationship with Jesus Christ to those around me? Am I being kind and loving and generous? Am I living the life that is displaying love and grace to other people? Now, that's a long road, and I fail every single day, and I'm certainly a work in progress. But to me, that's really what success is, and
Yeah.
so
That's very nicely said, man. And I love your definition. And we won't be successful without failures, right?
right.
And I like a quote, like you said, with climbing mountains, right? Your success of being there is not necessarily you accomplish that goal, but what you become in the process of doing it.
Exactly.
That's very nice.
Yeah,
So
I think if your only goal definition of success is to achieve, say, standing on top of the mountain, you might miss many lessons along the way, that could have been actual success,
exactly. A lot of people, want to talk about their successful things in their lives, but very few people want to talk about failures, right? Because without them, we won't learn anything, right? So tell me, you have an exciting career professionally, medically, right? You're a trained professional. you're doing like hard things sometimes in your branch. And what do you think it would have been a moment in your professional career that you thought kind of pushed you over the line, over your limits?
Hon- Honestly, I think just becoming a flight nurse was probably like the biggest accomplishment in my career. It's the reason I became a nurse in the first place. I was going to school for something completely not healthcare related. I had zero interest. I didn't know that men became nurses at all. When I was 19, my one of my best friends died in a skiing accident up in Mount Rose in Reno, Nevada. He crashed off a ski jump and was air flighted to the local hospital there, the trauma center, and he lived for 5 days until they declared him brain dead, and then he passed away. After that moment, I was like, I want to do whatever those people do that were in that helicopter that flew him. And so I went and talked to the school counselor here, and I said, hey, I want to be a paramedic. I want to be in a helicopter. And she's like, why don't you become a nurse and be in a helicopter? And I was like, I didn't know nurses did that, but sure, I'll do that. So she put me on the path to do that. And that's exactly what I did. So every decision I made and every step I took through nursing school and from then on was with the goal of my career being a flight nurse. So I'd ask people at the hospital that is associated with our college here, what do I have to do this? And they would spell it out for me, like do this, this, and this. And that's exactly what all my decisions were. So I think it's like I did extra things. So I did internships in the ICUs, got to know the right people so that I could be hired right out of nursing school into the ICU. Spent a couple years there getting the most challenging patients so that I could prove that I have taken care of hard patients early on in my career. Then I moved to the emergency room for a couple of years and got that experience because they hired people out of the emergency room because they wanted ICU and ER experience. So spent time there. Within 4 years, I was hired onto the flight program, which is a pretty quick escalation to that point. You have to have a minimum of 3 years of critical care or ER experience to be hired as a flight nurse anyway. And so I was able to get there in 4 years. And so to me, having that motivation and focus and goal is what got me to my end desire of this is what I want to do for my career now, where I've been for the last 10 years. And just really seeking out the people that are already doing it and asking them, hey, what did you do to get there? What do I need to do to get there? And then just putting that path in front of me. And it's like a rubric, like just follow the steps and keep your head up and work hard. And yeah. And so, the specific, like, I guess, patient or kind of example, but just in general, like that is the biggest win in my career is getting my career of a flight nurse, because that was the whole goal in the first place. And it's not an
That's
easy
awesome.
job to get. Yeah. So,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
it's obviously, it's a big goal to do that. And also on this path, I believe you took a lot of risks too, right?
Right.
It's by definition a risky profession to be in anyway, and you deal with risks every day. I kind of want to segue into the other part of our podcast, which is how does a medical professional like us deal with risks in general, and not only in the professional life but also in the investment life.
Sure.
And what would be something that you consider, that you have a skill or a habit in your life that can get you through these moments all the time?
Sure. Yeah, you are asking tough questions. Jeez, you said this is going to be easy. No, I think in general, I have a fairly high risk tolerance. Everybody has their own risk tolerance, right? I mean, some people are very, very conservative in their risk profile, and some are very, aggressive. I have a fairly high personal risk tolerance based on my hobbies that I do, based on my profession. Getting in a helicopter is, in general, a risky endeavor, right? But I think anytime you have risk, you have to look at how you can mitigate it and what are the actual risk factors, and is there any way to mitigate it? So for instance, I fly a lot of night shifts, and so it's dark. We have night vision goggles. That's one way to mitigate a night risk. We get bad weather here in the wintertime. Fog rolls in, big rainstorms come in. We can fly in some weather conditions, but we have a lower threshold for either turning around, aborting the flight altogether, or not even taking the flight at all. And we just take an ambulance or just say we're not doing it. So we mitigate that risk by allowing ourselves the ability to remove ourselves from the patient's emergency and realizing that this is not our emergency. So let's assess it from we're over here removed from the emergency standpoint, because if we don't make it, you cannot fail when it comes to flying a helicopter, right?
Right.
Like failure is death.
Exactly.
So success
Especially
is
if you have a patient with you too.
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So, the number one goal is we stay alive so that we can continue to provide care. But, there's, when it comes to like investing, my risk tolerance is not the same thing as different investors' risk tolerance. So I've found that I need to, if I say I've been bringing investors' money into a syndication or whatever, I need to make sure it matches their risk tolerance. Now, I will say, like in the past few years, my risk profile has changed to where I was investing solely in, say, multifamily apartment syndications, and I've since more diversified myself. I invest in ATMs now. I invest in oil and gas drills now. And most recently, which we can talk about if you want, but we're releasing a fund where we're going to be investing in car wash development and some more oil and gas. So to me, I see it like to spread load that risk across different asset classes, different geographies. For me, that's where I land. Now, for somebody else, it might be I will only invest in apartments, or I will only invest in self-storage, and that's their risk tolerance.
Let's backtrack a little bit for the audience and kind of set the stage with your vision of investing, right? So, in general, as medical professionals, we all consider that we're making good money, right? We have a good income in general. There's not a problem of like having issues financially,
right?
But there is also the concept of having a separate passive income stream, right, from somewhere else, from investments, different types of investments and stuff like that. And you mentioned several of them. In your case, what would be your strategy in building those passive income streams? And do you have a preference in terms of what kind of investments do you do? What's your point of view on that?
Yeah. So I'm 39 years old, so I have a longer runway to mess things up for myself, right? So I can, to me, take some bigger risks. I would like to not work till I'm 65 personally, I'd like to have some time freedom in that, right? And again, like to me, success is not about the dollar amount or how rich I am. It's one of the things is how much time I have to spend with my family, experiencing life outside of the actual profession. I love my job, but I love my time away from my job as well, if not more, right? So for me, like at this point, I have kind of 4 criteria for my investments. I want there to be risk mitigated through diversification. So that's in terms of asset classes and geographies. So I'm not just investing in multifamily in Dallas, or just multifamily in Houston, or just self-storage in Atlanta or something like that, right? So I want to diversify my asset classes. That way, if one takes a hit, like the other one can hold it up. I want to have equity growth, so an opportunity to have a exponential equity multiple happen to my funds within a reasonable time frame, 5 to 10 year period, I'd say. And but I also want cash flow. So the cash flow is how you are able to actually step away from working as much, right? That's that stream of income that can replace your W-2 or your active income. But I need the equity growth to be able to keep investing in things that provide cash flow, because cash flow alone, you'd have to save, and then reinvest in something else, save. So I need both. I need equity growth and I need cash flow, right? And then the last thing is tax mitigation. So I would say that I think a lot of people are sold a bill of goods when it comes to tax advantages of real estate investing, of passive investing, because most of us W-2 employees cannot take advantage of that to the extent that people who are real estate professionals can. So I look for opportunities where I can mitigate my taxes, my W-2 tax burden. And that's things like oil and gas. And there are other opportunities out there to do that. But that's really why I've started looking at investing in oil and gas, and including in addition to things like the ATMs and the car washes and the multifamily. That's all on the passive side. I cannot write my W-2 income off with that, but I can with the oil and gas. So I have seen significant return of my tax burden, or improvement in my tax burden, by investing in oil and gas.
That's awesome.
It's risky. certainly, but that's why I mitigate that by spreading it over to something that's less risky. So those four
Interesting.
things are
So,
just to summarize them: risk mitigation,
yeah,
equity, cash flow, and tax advantages. Tax advantages that I can use as a
right.
W-2 employee.
Yes, and that's very important for the the level of income that we have. Our biggest expense are taxes, right?
In oil and
Yes,
gas, the year you invest in it, you can deduct 75 to 85% of that year. So if I invest 100,000, I might get a 75 to $85,000 deduction. Say I make $300,000 that year, pulling 75 to 85,000 off of that and bringing it down to 220, 230, like that's significant. It could put you in a whole other tax bracket for one. And
exactly.
on that, you paying taxes on that amount all year, and that's a return that you can then reinvest.
Right. And plus that the investment itself in oil and gas brings cash flow anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That's awesome, man. Also, I'm kind of curious of someone in your position, right, with a demanding job, medical professional, with interest in different kinds of passive income streams and investments. How you're 39 years old. How would you advise someone that comes in your footsteps to do at this
Yeah.
point?
So I'll say one, your job is a lot more demanding than my job, and your path to your job was a lot harder than mine. I work 12-hour shifts a week. That's full time. Sometimes I work 12 if we are fully staffed. Sometimes I work 4 or 5 shifts if we got a lot of holes. But in general, like I don't take my job home. I go to work, I clock in, I do my job, hopefully well, clock out, come home, and I'm hands off. I don't have to think about it. I can go do something else. I usually work night shifts, which frees up my days. Granted, I do sleep most of the time in between shifts. But if I have meetings in the day, I just wake up, do my meeting, and go back to bed. Or I'll set my schedule around those meetings. Or if I have an event to go to or a property to go tour, I can just adjust my schedule because I'm only working 3 shifts a week anyway. That gives me 4 days a week to work on investing. Not to
Yes.
mention I have the day between shifts if I have the time or don't need to sleep for it. For physicians, I could see that being harder just because your schedule is more demanding. I mean, especially those that work 5 days a week. It'd be hard to get off of a 9 to 5 type of job
Yeah.
and then go do estate investing, right? So
Right.
I think I have the advantage over that because I have the extra days off. And so, I mean, I guess from your perspective, people that have the 9 to 5 that are in healthcare, like that, to me, that's the hard part. Like
Hmm.
me, it's not much to juggle because I just go to work 3 days and then I
Yeah,
do real estate. So,
I see.
you know, yeah.
So speaking of that, how is a day in a life of Mike Herman looks like?
A day of work or a day of off work?
A day of, let's say a day, one
That's
of the
right.
day, not the nights.
Okay, so let's see. Yesterday, I worked last night. So yesterday was spent, woke up, I went for a run. So I try to be active. It's not always possible. Yeah, we can talk about. I
Well, that
think,
that that would have been my next question. What do you do for, like, maintaining yourself
yeah.
and, health
Well,
wise?
let me wrap both of those into each other
Yeah.
then, because that's good. Um, I find myself like I'm kind of like the stock market when it comes to health and nutrition, right? I'll have like a really good streak, and then I'll be like, okay, I'm tired, and because working nights, sometimes I do get too tired to do something. I did
Yeah.
75 hard last year. I don't know if you're familiar with that challenge, but
Yes.
the biggest thing I learned from that is I have the time, and because it's demanding, it's a lot of time. And I
Yes.
thought, no way did I have that kind of time. But I realized if I put my phone down, if I stop scrolling, if I turn the TV off, I have the time to do everything
Exactly.
that
That's a great
requires.
point.
It's crazy. And so
Yes.
as I sit here now, not doing 75 hard, I get off work, I'm tired. I'm gonna go, eat something, go shower, lay in bed. And I'm like, I don't have time or energy to work out right now. But I do to sit there and scroll on my phone for 30 minutes while I'm getting tired and going to bed. But I could have gone and done that walk or whatever it was that I needed to do, right? So back to the original question is, what does a day look like? I try to fit in some sort of activity, some sort of workout or walk or run. We have a dog that we loves to go for a walk and things like that.
Nice.
And then if I'm working, at some point I need to take a nap. Like I will not go into a night shift without sleeping
Yeah.
at least some portion of the day, just because I need to be mentally clear. I could be working literally from when I clock in to when I clock out, could be flying and taking care of patients. And that's at night. I mean, we're not built to be up at night. And I've been doing
Right.
that. I've been night shift for 14 years, so I'm used to it. But at the same time, I recognize there is a cloudiness that happens, at 3 a.m, and that I need to
Yeah.
be mentally sharp for my patients and for our safety and everything. So try to get a nap. Now I have, because we have done some syndications, I have calls every Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm always on those calls. So that's more of an afternoon type thing. And then, it's a matter of having dinner with my wife before we go. She works night shift as well as an ER nurse. It's having that kind of time. On a days off, we try to do something fun. Whether it's go for a hike somewhere, travel. We like to travel. She has 3 kids, and so we're busy with them. They have sports. It's a lot of driving around in school and starting up here in a couple weeks. So it's hard to say I have a day in the life because my schedule is so all over the place. That no
Yeah.
day is the same.
Uh, that's great. We all have 24 hours in a day, right? So
Right.
it's a matter of how you prioritize stuff in your life. And like you said, you can make so much time by erasing stuff that doesn't matter, like
Right.
scrolling or going, on Facebook or whatever, social media or watching TV, all this type of
Mindless.
time-consuming activities they don't produce much. Um, yeah, it's interesting. You were mentioning that you're doing some syndications. So obviously, multifamily is a big part of your life right now, right? How did you start in that? Where are you now? What are
Yeah.
your goals? And do you think it's something that you can advise someone to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's also a hard question, and I'll just tell you why. But basically, I started real estate investing in 2019, doing my own stuff. I bought 5 properties in Huntsville, Alabama, so out of state. I had a single family, a few duplexes, and a fourplex. Those did fantastic, but I realized like the scalability of that for somebody at my income level is going to take too long to just keep buying more of those to replace cash flow, right? So I looked at different means of investing, and I found apartment syndication through a mentor, which is actually how we met, based out of Dallas, Texas. Joined that program, paid a pretty good fee to be mentored and have coaches and whatnot to learn, like, because it's a big deal to when you get in the syndication world. Right now, it's a whole nother thing. Like it's an actual business. You're bringing in money from investors. It's a lot more than just having a duplex or a fourplex, right? You're
Right,
buying a business, and the tenants are your customer.
right.
So learn that process pretty thoroughly. I became a very proficient underwriter. I've taken 100-hour course on underwriting. Can underwrite any commercial type of asset now, because of that course. So really push myself to learn it. Since then, I've invested passively in a couple of projects, and we've co-general partnered where we were actually syndicators and brought money into a couple of them as well. I mean, I can really go into it if you want, but we got into what our bridge loans. I don't know, your audience. I don't want to bore them with too many details on that. These are short-term floating rate loans that we got into when interest rates were really low. Turns out interest rates came up as faster than ever has happened before. This has put a really big strain on those type of loan products. And a lot of those loan products are coming due right now. And if you follow the news at all, you see a lot of the office space, is crumbling. There's been some multifamily properties that have gone under foreclosure because they can't get out of these loans. They got into high leverage, short-term floating rate debt. And turns out that is not a great strategy for investment. It's a high risk
Yeah,
strategy. And I think I've learned kind of probably the hard way that that's not the best risk profile for me and my investors. And so we fight every day, every week to keep our properties going. And thankfully, we have incredible teams. We have incredible property management that is certainly giving us our best chance of success on that. But yeah, I mean, it's a struggle right now on the multifamily front. And truthfully, that's why we are diversifying ourselves, our fund, what we're going to be syndicating. And it's, you hear people say, like, oh, the shiny object syndrome, you're just chasing the next great thing. It's like, no, I'm chasing what makes sense at the time, right? Like, so,
Yeah,
and maybe it is
it's
a short project, but
right.
like right now, multifamily is not necessarily where I want to be putting money because of where interest rates are. Um, and I certainly wouldn't do any more bridge debt, short-term floating loans on it because of my risk profile, I found is not compatible with that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's awesome. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a great goal to have, to kind of chase not the shiny object, but the things that make sense at the
right.
moment,
Well, and like I
Yeah,
said, my original things were risk mitigation, equity growth, cash flow, and taxes. And
yeah,
right now, multifamily, if you bought right now multifamily and put good long-term debt, you're fine on the risk mitigation side of it. Equity multiple, you probably will do okay with that if you were to buy a property right now. Cash flow, probably not happening right now where interest rates are, and certainly not on our properties. We've had no cash flow in terms of what's being distributed to any of us. And then tax advantages. There's no tax advantages for multifamily that actually help me as a W-2 employee. So
hmm
that's the kind of lens that we talked about earlier that I'm looking through investments at now,
yeah,
which is why our fund that we are starting is diversifying between oil and gas and car wash development, because the car wash development helps with the equity multiple component, and the oil and gas helps with the cash flow and the tax component, and then having them together
right.
blended helps with the risk mitigation.
Yeah, that's a great idea, man.
Yeah.
Do you have any projects going on right now that you're excited about?
Yeah, I mean that's it right there. Like my partners and I, Andy and Brandon, we were Guardian Multifamily was the company we created when we started doing our syndications together. We've since created GDI Capital Partners, and that's Guardian Diversified Investments Capital Partners, and it's just so we could do just this. So we have had an SEC attorney create a fund of funds for us, and so now we can raise into that fund for different asset classes.
Yeah,
And what's different about our fund is most of those funds are open-ended, meaning they just continually raise and put people in that fund. And the fund has the complete control of what they invest in. So the investor invests basically in the people that run the fund and hope that they make good decisions along the way and invest in whatever, mobile home parks or storage or whatever the case. Our fund's going to be a little different in that sense, in that we're going to have what we're calling tranches or segments where you can invest in this particular thing, and we're going to
yeah,
already have identified what's in that tranche, so that you can choose if you want to invest in those things or not. If you don't want to participate in that tranche, no problem. Like, you don't have to invest in it, but at least you know exactly what it is.
yeah. You
So
you
our
give
first
the
tranche,
options. Yeah,
exactly. So our first tranche is investing in Tommy's Car Washes, which is one of the fastest growing, most high tech automated surf through type car washes in the country. So we're investing with an operator who's already got 40 of those in some form of development or operation already. They're the biggest franchisee in the country, and so
hmm
of Tommy's. So we're going to invest in that for the equity growth with a 3 to 5 year time frame. And then I've already been investing in oil and gas with an operator based out of New York, who we don't do a single drill. We're doing 40 well drills to mitigate the risk of one not happening, right? So, and there's proof of concept and things like that. So by taking somebody, say $100,000 and putting 50 of it in a car wash and 50 of it in oil and gas, they get a little bit less of the cash flow that the oil would provide because it's split in half, and a little bit less of the tax advantages, and they get a little less of the equity multiple of the car wash, but they're blended. And so if
yeah,
one fails, the other one should return the number one goal is to return your capital, right? To not
right.
lose your money. And then if we
Yeah,
accomplish everything else,
people forget that about the investments, right? Because they
right,
they only think about the equity multiple at the end, or how
right,
much money can I make?
right,
But it's all about actually preserving your initial capital.
exactly. Yeah,
And a lot of
exactly.
people lose money because of that.
Yeah. And so our goal
Um,
is like, hey, let's get your capital returned to you in X amount of time frame, whether it be 3, 4, 5 years, and then hopefully the oil continues, because it doesn't end until the oil wells are dry. That's
right,
40 wells have to go dry for your
right,
investment to stop. It doesn't ever end. So once we deploy
exactly.
that capital from tranche one, we close tranche one and it's no longer open for investment. So
Yeah,
then we open tranche two, and it might be the exact same investment, but nobody from tranche one is exposed to the investors in tranche two, and nobody in tranche two is exposed to the investors in tranche one. Therefore, there's no dilution that happens with these open funds. Everybody that keeps coming in continues to dilute the depreciation and things
hmm
like that.
yeah,
And like I said, like, you know at least exactly what you're going to be investing in. And my my favorite part, this last thing I'll say about this fund is my favorite part about it is it's so investor friendly because we really are investors first. One of my things I hate the most is seeing syndicators make money while investors make nothing. And
Yeah.
so we are going to have a 10% preferred return, meaning if you only make 8% in year one, 2% will roll over to the 10% in year two. So you'll have a 12% and it'll continue on, right? So you'll get paid 10%. The investor will get paid 10% before we make any money. And most of the people that have a preferred return is based on the capital account, meaning what they continue to have out as risk. So if you invest 100,000, but I've returned 10,000, you only have $90,000 left in your capital account. So your 10% is based on that. Ours is based on your initial investment, period, no matter what, for the entirety of the fund. So whether you get all your money back, you still get the 10% preferred return before we make anything or before, and a full return of capital before any promote kicks in. So it's just like, I just get so tired of seeing syndicators make so much money and us investors don't make anything. It's a very, it drives me nuts. So that's one of our biggest things is we sat down and we said, how do we make this as investor friendly as possible? Because we want to invest in it as well. And
absolutely right.
That's
the basic rule, right? You have to put yourself in the shoes of your own investors. This Mike, this is amazing. So you're a very good example of someone who is a medical professional, has the same amount of time like everybody else, works nights, works days, works nights in your profession and works days in your other business, right? It's not a hobby anymore. It's another business. And, I hope the audience gets the kind of the advice that what you focus on grows, right? If you wanted to do this on your days, on your time off, you educated yourself financially, you took courses, you specialize in one section of this type of investments in underwriting them, and now you're a professional, not only medical, but in real estate. So it's a great example for someone who wants to kind of, entertain the idea of getting those passive income streams from other investments other than medical professional. And I just want to ask you, how can people get in touch with you, eventually get more advice, or, help them out?
You can always email me. I'm, very open to emails and questions. My email is mike@gdicapitalpartners.com. That's G as in golf, D as in David, I as in income, gdicapitalpartners.com. You can also visit our website, which is gdicapitalpartners.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you coming over. I hope to get together maybe later on in the year and see where you are and what you did, and hope the audience will benefit from this.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks, Tudor.
Sure. Thank you.
That's a wrap on Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Interested in joining us? Go to stellarsuccesspodcast.com/guest to apply. Stay stellar and level up.